Okay, to continue. Beating the opioid epidemic. When President Biden and Vice President Harris came into office, the number of drug overdose deaths was increasing by more than 30% year after year. Thanks to increased funding and resources, overdose deaths saw their biggest year-over-year decrease on record under President Biden. The Biden-Harris administration took critical steps to make this possible. Seizing deadly drugs to save American lives. Under President Biden's leadership, federal law enforcement agents kept more deadly drugs out of our communities than ever before. Officials stopped more fentanyl at ports of entry over 2 years than in the previous 5 years combined. The president also prioritized deploying cutting-edge drug detection technology across the southwest border. Cracking down on the global criminal networks that fuel American overdose deaths. President Biden cracked down on the global criminal networks fueling American overdose deaths. That meant holding accountable PRC-based companies that manufacture and distribute chemicals for making the fentanyl that fuels American overdose deaths. After the PRC refused for years to cooperate with the United States on counter-narcotics, President Biden convinced Beijing to deliver on concrete steps that will save American lives, shutting down companies that produce deadly drugs, placing controls on dangerous chemicals, and sharing information about emerging drug trends and threats. The United States also criminally charged leaders of the world's largest and most powerful drug cartel, as well as thousands of drug traffickers distributing fentanyl on our streets and on social media. The Treasury Department sanctioned more than 250 people and organizations involved in the global illicit drug trade. Delivering life-saving medication and care across America. President Biden took bold action to expand access to addiction treatment to save American lives, including by expanding access to life-saving medications such as buprenorphine and naloxone, delivering a 15-fold increase in the number of healthcare providers who can prescribe medications for opioid use disorder, and modernizing decades-old policies for opioid treatment programs. Under the Biden-Harris administration, historic investments in the state opioid response program have delivered free, life-saving medications across America, preventing more than 600,000 overdose deaths and delivering nearly 10 million naloxone kits. The Biden-Harris administration also acted to make naloxone available without a prescription at grocery stores and pharmacies, to make naloxone available at all federal facilities across America, and to allow Americans with opioid use disorder to access the medications they need through telehealth visits. Increased information sharing and coordinated disruption efforts. In July 2024, President Biden issued a national security memorandum on prioritizing the strategic disruption of illicit fentanyl and synthetic opioids through a coordinated, whole-of-government, information-driven effort. The National Security Memorandum directed increased intelligence collection, more intensive coordination and cooperation across relevant departments and agencies, and additional actions to disrupt the production and distribution of illicit fentanyl. Tackling the mental health crisis. To advance his unity agenda, President Biden took bold steps to transform how mental health is understood, accessed, treated, and integrated in and out of healthcare settings, taking on health insurers to expand access to mental health care for all Americans. The promise of mental health parity for all has united Republicans and Democrats for decades, and the president committed to taking on health insurers and making it a reality. The Biden-Harris administration finalized a mental health parity rule, which requires health plans to make sure they cover mental health at the same level as other health care for over 175 million Americans. Delivering the largest investment in school-based mental health ever. Thanks to the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the Biden-Harris administration delivered the largest investment in school-based mental health services in American history, providing nearly $1 billion to help train and hire an additional 16,000 mental health professionals to work in America's K-12 schools. Expanding mental health services for veterans. President Biden worked to make sure that every American veteran received access to timely, high-quality mental health services. Under his administration, the Department of Veterans Affairs hired new veteran peer specialists to serve in VA medical centers and in critical outreach roles nationwide. The Biden-Harris administration also launched the 988 Veterans Crisis Line to provide 24/7 mental health support for veterans. The administration removed cost sharing for the first 3 behavioral health visits for veterans and service members each year. They launched a new program to provide cost-free suicide care to over 80,000 veterans, reduced wait times for mental health visits at VA, and took executive action to better support military and veteran spouses, caregivers, and survivors by expanding critical programs, including those that provide mental health support. Expanding America's mental health workforce and clinics. When President Biden came into office, America's shortage of qualified mental health professionals and facilities made it harder for people to get the care they needed. President Biden delivered tens of billions of dollars to expand federal and state mental health and substance use services across America and called for permanent funding for certified community behavioral health clinics, which provide 24/7 crisis care and treatment for mental health and substance use disorders, regardless of the individual's ability to pay. His bipartisan Safer Communities Act was expanding these clinics to all states across the United States. The Biden-Harris administration authorized use of Medicaid to deliver mobile crisis services in 21 states and the District of Columbia, and also launched FindSupport.gov and 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which has connected over 10 million Americans in crisis to immediate, confidential, and free care from trained counselors. The next section is holding tech platforms accountable. The American tech industry is the most innovative in the world. President Biden recognized that although tech platforms can help people to share ideas, stay connected, and access new products and services, they can also wreak serious real-world harms. Protecting Americans' privacy and safety online, especially our kids. In 2024, President Biden took the most significant federal action any president has ever taken to protect Americans' data security. His executive order stops the large-scale transfer of sensitive personal data, which includes intimate insights into Americans' health, location, and finances, to countries like China and Russia. In each of his State of the Union addresses, Biden called for strong federal protections for Americans' privacy, including clear limits on how companies collect, use, and share highly personal data. In 2024, the Kids Online Health and Safety Task Force released a critical report calling for additional actions to better protect the online privacy, health, and safety of youth. Holding companies accountable for the harms they cause. Biden believed that all companies, including technology companies, should be held accountable for the harms they cause, including the content they spread and the algorithms they use. The Biden-Harris administration used its authorities to crack down on algorithmic discrimination and algorithmic collusion, and to bring more competition back to the tech sector. Biden worked with Congress to pass bipartisan legislation to boost funding for federal antitrust enforcers. Making sure AI is safe, secure, and trustworthy. President Biden moved swiftly to seize the promise and manage the risks of AI. In 2023, he issued a landmark executive order on AI to ensure that America leads the way toward responsible AI innovation. The order directed federal agencies to establish new high standards for AI safety and security to protect Americans' privacy, advance equity and civil rights, stand up for workers and consumers, and much more. The order used the Defense Production Act to compel developers of the most powerful AI systems to report vital safety information. The order also resulted in a government-wide AI talent surge that brought hundreds of AI professionals into government. He took action to put AI to work for the American people in areas ranging from health innovation to sustainable materials, clean energy, and more. The FCC took critical action to make AI-generated robocalls illegal, and the new AI Safety Institute is leading the government's efforts on AI safety and trust. Additionally, 16 AI companies made voluntary commitments on safe and responsible AI use in partnership with the White House. These commitments include internal and external security testing before releasing AI systems and sharing information with the public about safety risks and dangerous capabilities. The Biden-Harris administration also imposed export controls to restrict the highest performing AI chips from falling into the hands of those who could use them against the United States. Finally, President Biden issued an executive order to ensure that the infrastructure needed for advanced AI operations, including large-scale data centers and power infrastructure, can be built with speed and scale here in the United States. I'm going to start a new video that starts with delivering on our sacred obligation to America's veterans and their families. Okay.